So we're talking about the subject matter of this course, weekend course, the Mahamudra. Mahamudra can refer to emptiness itself. It's the great seal that certifies that phenomena exist, that they are empty of inherent existence. Actually, even non-existent things are empty of inherent existence, so it covers everything. But Mahamudra in this meditative tradition also refers to the special method of the Mahasiddhas to develop an experience of meditative equipoise upon which you then graft on the understanding, the correct view of emptiness, rather than the usual way through the system of logic and Majjhimika and everything to study emptiness, understand it intellectually, and then later in your career to meditate on that. Here at the beginning, you get some taste. My teacher Lama Yeshe used to say that was so, so much more interesting to Westerners. We're looking for some taste. Like oftentimes the Tibetans would be very satisfied when they go to the monasteries for rituals, to recite mantra or recite the sutras that they don't even know what they're saying for hours and hours. They leave satisfied that they created virtuous karma. And Westerners are not that way. We want, what is it? I want it all and I want it now, right? Have you heard that? There's some expression like that, or song or something. Excuse me. So for us to have a chance to study and practice Mahamudra might be quite monumental. Lama Tsongkhapa, Lama Yeshe, my teacher, as I said, he left the monastery before getting his Geshe degree and did many retreats rather than taking on the responsibility. If you received a Geshe degree, you had a certain obligation to the Tibetan government to do rituals and do things for the government because your degree was kind of honored by the government and so forth. So instead of that, he went off and did retreats, and I think Mahamudra and the 6 yogas of Naropa were 2 very important retreats that Lama did that brought about some real taste, some experience of the teachings. So we got to the point of preliminaries in the text. And we've talked about, just briefly touching on, just began to mention about purification and accumulation of merit. So why is that important? To bring about some little seedling sprout of realization, understanding of Mahamudra, experience of emptiness, clear light nature of the mind, let's say. Very difficult to generate, to have the patience to sit and watch the mind, very difficult to be successful in doing that. One of the reasons is that our mind is still under the influence of karmic obscurations, negative actions that we've created in the past. Yeah, kind of like leaves on the surface of a bed of seeds, leaves from the tree that prevent the sun from coming down, or like rocks in the soil or twigs on the top that prevent things from growing. So if you can eliminate those seeds from our mind, we call them karmic seeds. You know what karma means? What does karma mean? You're Indian. Well, you have to know what karma means.
It's
Don't take so long, you're Indian, come on.
it's the mind.
Karma is the mind?
It's the mind.
What does karma mean in Sanskrit, in Hindi?
The literal meaning would be action or to do.
Action.
Yeah.
So our actions are actual karma. What is actual, you hit something or you soothe someone's shoulder, take it easy, you say sweet words. Those are actions of body and speech. They are all motivated by the mind, by a particular facet of the mind that we call intention. And I know this bad in Sempa. I'm not sure the Sanskrit, I think, is chetana. But anyway, it's the mental factor that moves the mind from one to the object that it's observing. Okay? Kind of like a magnet pulls the mind to something, intention. So it's that that creates virtuous karma, negative karma, neutral karma. How does it create? Not just by itself. The movement of the mind is karma, is action, but whether it becomes virtuous or non-virtuous or remains neutral depends on whatever other factors, flavors are in the mind, emotions. If you're in a state of anger and you look at the enemy or you're thinking about the enemy, you move your mind to that, it's like putting sand on the surface of a nicely sanded new softwood tabletop. I say softwood for a reason, like sands and gritty particles, and then you put another cloth of that, you rub that sand on there, you move it, that's the chetana, the intention, and it leaves a deformation in the mind, right? In the wood. Like that, if there's negative factors in the mind, when the mental factor moves towards something, mental factor of intention, it creates negative karma. That's called negative action. And that very action itself leaves some residue within the mind. This is one way of looking at it, thinking of it like this. In Buddhist philosophy, there's a lot of argument about how the karma is retained, how the imprints of the karma are stored. You can think of it as having left a seed or imprint in the mind, karmic seed. If, on the other hand, you put talcum powder on the top, or a nice, what's it called, oil that you use, linseed oil, and you rub that in, instead of deforming the surface, it leaves a nice glow or makes it better, like having a virtuous mental factor in the mind, love and compassion or patience or understanding of impermanence. So when your mind moves, then you're creating virtuous karma, which leave virtuous imprints, virtuous seeds of virtuous karma in the mind. The karma is already finished. Sometimes something bad happens to people in the West, they say, oh, that's my karma. And that's your karma. Your karma you created already. It's like the result of the karmic seeds you've sown within your mind. I mentioned in one of the other courses, when I would teach college classes or high school students in Wisconsin, the last monastery I was, they'd come to the temple, I'd ask them, what is karma? You know what karma is? And they'd say, oh yeah, we know what karma is. What is it? What goes around comes around. Have you heard that expression? Anna? Have you heard that expression? What goes around comes around? Hip, like young millennial kind of thing. Actually, that doesn't mean, if you look in the history of that expression, do you know where that comes from? I think I've told you before, some of you. Venerable, do you remember? From the Dark Ages, when the Black Plague was going through Europe, if you were to ask, Mommy, is the plague coming to our village? What goes around comes around. If it's going around out there, it's eventually going to come here. So this isn't not really talking about karma. Really better short aphorism for karma is what Christ said. Ye reap what ye sow. Whatever seeds you leave in your mind, when they ripen, you're going to experience something similar to the action that left those seeds. If you plant a lemon tree, you have lemon seeds, you'll get lemon tree. You won't get hot pepper or apple. If you plant a medicinal plant, you won't get medicinal seeds, you won't get poisonous plant, and so forth. There's a certain definite nature of karma like that between the causes and the results. So one of the first things we have to do is purify the negative seeds in our mind that are preventing realizations. as you begin to meditate more and more, as you practice the path for some time, you begin to realize, gosh darn, I try my hardest to meditate on love, compassion, renunciation. Nothing works, you know. I just like, I must be the one person who doesn't have Buddha nature or something like that. You know, you might think. Well, maybe because we haven't done purification. So from a Buddhist perspective, when you do confession, is one way that's translated, but you shouldn't think of what Christianity and Catholicism especially think of confession, or Judaism. In Judaism, I understood, I heard on the BBC once, in order to confess something, you have to confront the very person you harmed and get their forgiveness. You have to ask for their forgiveness. From Buddhist perspective, has nothing to do with purification of negative karma, or we can say confession. The word used sometimes in translating is confession, but it actually means revealing. So it means fessing up in your own mind, coming to grips. You know, like up till now you thought, yeah, no, I didn't do anything wrong. They needed to hear those harsh words. Can you imagine that? You know, we think, you know, I didn't do anything wrong. It's not so bad. But fessing up, realizing we've created negative karma, and the strongest antidote to that is the feeling of remorse or regret. Do you know what those words mean? It doesn't mean feeling guilty. That's completely inappropriate. This is my Italian mudra, mother's mudra. It doesn't mean feeling guilty. You might think that guilt sounds like similar to remorse, right? Feeling guilty is already solidifying it, almost like it's truly existent. I'm a bad person. Only some other power can forgive me. I still have this stain upon me, but they'll accept me because they're God or something like that. Remorse is a state of mind that recognizes we've been unskillful in the past, and when we've developed a little insight, we say, whoa, I shouldn't have done that. Feeling some regret. Can you see a little difference between that and guilty, feeling guilty? Feeling remorse or regret. Those are two different words. I'm trying to say the same thing, but you might translate it in different ways. Feeling regret that you did something. That is one of the most powerful ways to purify negative karma. There's said to be 4 opponent forces of the negative seeds that we've created. We want to get rid of them. But first, most powerful is regret. Another one is,
promise not to do it.
I'm going to leave that for a second. Another one is to create some virtuous action as an antidote to that negative action. You say, how can it be an antidote? The negative seed is still there. Even if you don't purify it completely, like, have you ever seen ropes that are, one strand is white, one strand is black, they're wrapped together, sort of like, looks like a snake or something? So striped, we call it striped karma. So if you've created negative karma, kind of like black thread, if you can associate with it some virtuous action, like if you've stolen from mom's purse or you did something bad, as an antidote to that, you make offerings to others, you make offerings to the Buddha. It's like creating some virtuous karma that you dedicate in case this black negative karma hasn't been totally eradicated through your other purification methods. When it ripens, the white karma that you've created associated with it will ripen at the same time, like, give an example, like losing your credit card, being freaked out, and then suddenly someone says, oh, the bank that you have your credit card at is right here, you can go in and cancel it, that no one will be able to steal it. Something good will happen at the same time to ameliorate, to make less the negative karma of the black karma. That's called the power of the antidote. Have you heard of that before? There are different kinds. You haven't heard that before? So, for instance, there are many ways to create virtuous karma of the antidote. One is to recite the names of the Buddhas, to recite mantras like the Vajrasattva mantra. The actual recitation of the mantra is the power of the antidote. Then, to act as a support of your purification, we call the power or force of, what do we call it? Support?
Refuse.
Not refuse. Refuge. Refuse is what you throw away. Well, there's one, but we call it the power, what is it? Not support?
Reliance?
Reliance, yeah. Reliance is another. It's like support or reliance. Like if you fall to the ground, you have to use the ground to get up again. You have to put your hand down or balance yourself to get up. The two fields with whom we create negative karma, other beings, and ordinary beings, and holy beings, or the Buddha Dharma Sangha. So with respect to Buddha Dharma and Sangha, negative karma we created, how do we rely on them to purify that? We take refuge in Buddha Dharma Sangha. Negative karma we've created with sentient beings, how do we rely on sentient beings to purify that? By generating an altruistic mind for their benefit, out of compassion, wishing to attain enlightenment for them, bodhicitta. So at the beginning of many rituals, we always take refuge and generate bodhicitta. That's called the power of reliance. And then once you've purified them, the karma in those ways, you have some feeling that's purified, then the fourth opponent force in this, you can say them in different orders, you don't have to say them in this order, is what's called the power of resolve or promise or vow. So making a strong resolution, having cleaned this up, this mess up, I'm not going to do that again in the future. Sometimes you can't really promise you're never going to get angry again, you'll never be attached again, you'll never get jealous again. What was that song? I remember when I was in India studying yoga, what was it? Annie, I'm never going to fall in love again. Do you know that song? As though you could, future lives you're going to have strong desire, you're going to fall in love again. It's very difficult to make a promise over a long period of time. So at the beginning, just to say, for the next 5 minutes, I'm not going to get angry. And extend that over time. If you're successful in that 10 minutes and then maybe a day. I remember when I was in India at Tushita Center, before the present place in Tushita Center in India. It was so frustrating sometimes. All the rickshaw drivers would, shortchange you or something like this. It seemed like. So I noticed myself sometimes kicking the tire of the rickshaw. I was leaving like this, getting angry, I'm thinking. So even every day, one angry episode I would try to completely let go of, instead of kicking the tire, just thank you. So applying the four opponent forces, one way to do that in a unified way is to practice a particular, what's mentioned in the text here, to recite the so-called 100-syllable mantra. Have you heard that expression before? So you've heard of mantras before? It's Brian, right?
Ryan.
What?
Ryan.
Oh, Ryan, not Brian. Okay, Ryan.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I had a dear friend in California we called him Crash Ryan. He was a big car fan, but he'd had a couple of crashes, so.
Your friends have cool nicknames.
Fireball, Crash. Okay, so I can remember right. So you've heard of mantras.
Yeah.
So what are mantras? What does mantra mean, or?
Mantra, means a recitation of a phrase or Buddhist syllables with meaning. So Om Mani Padme Hum.
Good. That's not bad. Felicity?
It's a mind seal.
Mind.
Seal. Like a
Mind?
mind, it's like protects the mind.
Literally, the word mantra, the etymology, manas means mind, shortened to man. Tra, I can't remember the other part of the syllable, means to protect. That which protects the mind. How does the recitation of a verbal phrase like Om Mani Padme Hum, how does that protect the mind? Because if you concentrate on that, just as we're concentrating in our meditation, when we try to watch the mind itself, we let go of other thoughts. We don't sustain their longevity by following them. If you think about the thought and there's one association after another, that thought remains in your mind. So protecting your mind from negative conceptualization, that's one meaning of mantra. But even other things besides verbal recitations are called mantra. Those things that protect the mind. You could say emptiness is the great mantra. In the Prajnaparamita Sutra that we studied last weekend, the Heart Sutra. By the way, if anyone's watching this and you want to do, I think all of those will be eventually up on the YouTube. You go to YouTube and put Guhya Samaja Center. If you go to Guhya Samaja page, you don't have a link. You do have a link there? I didn't see.
In the top.
Under which?
There's a button that says YouTube.
Oh, okay. Okay, so if you want to watch those. So that particular sutra, the Heart Sutra, is called the perfection. It's the perfection of wisdom in 25 stanzas. One of the shortest ones. I mentioned in the earlier time that there is an even shorter one called the Prajnaparamita in one syllable. Actually, there's many more syllables, but when the Buddha in that, just a couple sentences, it's the syllable ah. Remember this morning I mentioned before, like an atama or ah, the syllable ah is a negative particle, so just negating inherent existence. It's the root syllable of white Manjushri, many other deities, ah. Not? Ah. Oh,
D.
no, I'm just joking. That's red, yellow Manjushri, orange Manjushri, D. But white Manjushri, the sealed syllable is ah. You say the Om Bhaginam Nama ah, just like when you say Om Arapasana di. It's similar for white Manjushri. So that which protects the mind also is the Prajnaparamita, the wisdom that realizes the ultimate nature of phenomena, or you could say the Mahamudra. It's a mantra. So that's one thing that's very useful to do to purify negative karma before engaging in meditation. If you're going to do a retreat over several weekends, maybe you're going to say, okay, rather than spending my weekends watching TV or just doing mindless things, of course there's certain things you have to do. You have to clean the yard and take the garbage out and so forth. But I'm going to do retreat in between my work during the week for a couple of weeks. Maybe the first session spend on purification practices, like recitation of the mantra, applying the four opponent forces to the negative actions you remember committing, and accumulating virtuous karma, which we'll talk about also. Very, very important. If you've taken vows this lifetime, anyone have taken vows here? Different kind of vows? Lay vows. Have anyone taken lay vows? You taken lay vows? You taken lay vows? You girls taking vows back there?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't put your hands up. Vietnamese don't get special privilege. You have to put your hand up. You've taken vows also? Anna, have you taken any vows? Okay, you're all shy to put your hands up. Everyone's taken vows. Other than Ryan, I think. Ryan? Mhm.
I've taken wedding vows.
Oh, you're taking wedding vows, okay. In this context, that's not counted, but yeah, that's
Okay.
similar, yeah, like making some. So sometimes when you might even think of that. sometimes when we've made vows, like lay vows not to kill, steal, lie, engage in sexual misconduct, and so forth, take intoxicants, maybe we've lapsed, maybe we've taken someone's soap from the bathroom because they don't mind, taken something that wasn't given. Maybe we've done worse, maybe we cheated on our tax or something like that. Maybe we've lied, even though we thought, oh, it's okay, it's a white lie, it's for the benefit, we've lied. Maybe we've flirted with people when we had some serious relationship, a little bit like sexual misconduct or worse. So if we've broken the vows, those vows that we've contravened no longer have the same capacity to generate virtuous karma. Generally, if you don't do a negative action, it doesn't mean you've created virtuous karma, right? Like today, I have not killed an elephant. By the virtue of not killing an elephant, have I created the virtuous karma of abstaining from killing? No, I didn't make it. Well, if you make a vow not to kill an elephant, and you keep that vow, even there's no opportunity to kill an elephant, you still accumulate virtuous karma. This is one of the reasons people take vows. They say the 5 lay vows, or the vows of a monk or nun, or the bodhisattva vows, or the tantric vows. Even if you keep that vow, you've made a strong intention to keep this vow, and even though you forgot about it, there's some imprint in the mind, you continuously create virtuous karma. This is why in the time of the Buddha, the monastics who took the vows of a monk or nun, remember originally there were no vows, people were naughty, the Buddha made more and more rules, there were certain vows. So if you keep those vows for your lifetime, you create so much virtuous karma. This is why the people at the time of the Buddha, the monastics and so forth, were able to develop concentration, wisdom, achieve nirvana, make high realizations on the basis of keeping pure morality. Because that pure morality created virtuous karma, which sustained their realizations, act like the fertilizer of that. So if you've broken vows, which we all have in previous lives, if not this lifetime, we've taken vows in previous lifetimes, we've broken them, that acts as a hindrance. No longer does that, moreover, not only does that no longer create virtuous karma, or strong virtuous karma, because we've broken that vow, it acts as an obstacle to making realizations. So sometimes to renew your vows, how can you renew the lay vows? Well, you can't really, but one thing you can do is you can take the 24-hour precepts. What do we call them? 24 Mahayana precepts, let's say, in the Mahayana. In the Theravada tradition, I can't remember what it's called. Maybe they call it Posada, I think. 24-hour precepts. Have you heard of that? Maybe some of you have taken. In Vietnam, did you take? Or did you grow up in Los Angeles? Where did you go? Just because you're Vietnamese doesn't mean you were born in Vietnam, right?
We took them when we went to the Light of the Path.
Okay, you took care in the States, you get 24-hour precepts.
Yeah.
So there's 2 kinds. There's the general Theravada tradition, the Hinayana, and the Mahayana precepts. Same vows, except now with a motivation. The reason you're keeping these vows for 24 hours is to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. So it's kind of, maybe can help to purify the vows that we've broken in the past. One of my teachers, great Tibetan master called Tsong Rinpoche. Tsong Rinpoche in his teachings once mentioned that in the time of the Buddha there were these young novices who were frolicking. They weren't taking their Buddhist education very seriously. They were out swimming and acting like animals, playing in the water, and the laity complained to the Buddha. They're not very good examples, what are you doing, you can imagine. And the Buddha told, I think he told, or else the people told Shariputra or Mahamudra, I can't remember, anyone, one of the senior monks told them, out of compassion. He didn't just chastise them. He said, you have to do the bi-monthly confession because you've broken your vows by playing and being reckless like this. One of the main general sense of vows, many of the vows, is not to cause the mind of the laity to lose respect in the Sangha. Do you know what I mean? Like today in the Catholic Church, maybe it's even in the Buddhist tradition also, where the lamas have sexual misconduct. And then people think, phew, all these years I've followed that lama or this person or this priest, and they weren't practicing morality. So to cause the mind of the laity or the followers to lose faith, that's considered to be very, very ruinous toward Buddhism. So that's sort of the motivation why the Buddha prohibited certain kinds of behavior. So what this monk told them, they had to do the bi-monthly confession to confess their vows because they weren't making any realizations. They would go to school, they weren't making any kind of progress. As soon as they did the confession, purifying the negative karma, like within days they started making realizations. This is some famous story. So we can use all of these anecdotes, we might think as parables or stories or something, as something we can put into practice, As we purify, say if you're going to try to meditate on the Mahamudra, purify beforehand. Regret the transgressions of vows that you've taken, and regret the transgressions of vows you didn't take this lifetime, but you might have taken in previous lifetimes. So that's mainly the importance of purification. Then you need to, let's say if you're going to try to grow a garden, medicinal plants, spiritual realizations, you also have to add something to the soil. If it's this barren soil, if it's sand or hard mud with no nutrients in it, difficult for many things to grow in that, realizations to take root. So you have to create some virtuous karma, which is another synonym for virtuous karma, almost synonym, is merit. You have to create merit. I think even in Christianity and some other religions, they talk about doing good things as meritorious deeds. So those kind of actions, like putting this oil on the wood rather than the gritty sand, when the mind moves to something, it leaves a nice imprint in the mind, which will bring about some experience of pleasure within cyclic existence. We call it virtuous karma. Has left the seeds of virtuous karma, meritorious seeds, which when the right conditions arise can give their fruition, the harvest of that. You will reap some pleasure, something pleasurable within cyclic existence, or it can act, as the opposite of obscurations. Negative karma, not only can it ripen in suffering, but just the existence of that negative karma, the negative karmic seeds, they act as obscurations, like leaves on the surface or something, stones in the dirt, so that plants can't come up. On the other hand, virtuous karma can act like fertilizer to our realizations. So we want to do both. We want to eliminate negative karma, and we want to accumulate virtuous karma. Many ways to accumulate virtuous karma. We can do ritual, where we think of various things in succession, what we call the seven-limbed offering, seven-limbed puja. Have you heard of that? You know, seven-limbed puja?
7 limbs I've heard of, but
Yeah.
a whole puja you mean around it?
Well, puja, do you know the word puja? I don't think I mentioned the other day. Remember, Rajiv, what puja meant?
Oh, yeah.
You said offering or something, homage, but I said more broadly it means what? You forgot already.
I believe you said it was respecting somebody.
No,
other than-
you have made it up. Write down. Puja equals to please. But generally in the Vedic tradition in India, before the Buddha and afterwards, the way that you would please the gods, you would make puja, you would offer flowers or fire puja, you would throw grains into the fire to offer to the gods and so forth. How did the Israelis please the gods, or God?
By killing Palestine.
Yahweh. By what?
You said by killing Palestinians.
No, by killing goats,
Sacrifice.
lambs,
Yeah, sacrifice, right?
sacrificing.
Sacrifice.
Usually we think of sacrifice, at least in the Judeo-Christian tradition, Muslim tradition, where they said peoples of the book, we often think of sacrifice as somehow offering. In a sense, if you sacrifice, if you restrain yourself from negative actions, like sacrifice, it's a sacrifice, but I'm not going to take that piece of baklava. I'd like to take it, but I'm going to sacrifice that for the sake of my health, or something. So, if you sacrifice indulging in negative actions, knowing that they will have negative repercussions, and that in sacrificing, abstaining from them, this is the real sacrifice, rather than sacrificing other people's beings' lives, like goats or on the pyre or something. You will create virtuous karma, which will then allow you to really help people, to be a real person. The Jewish people have a word in, what's their lingo called? Yiddish. Yiddish, Yiddish, kind of colloquial Jewish. A mensch. Actually, German is also a German word. Do you know what mensch means?
Man.
Man, right? Just means man. But when the Jewish say, oh, he's a mensch, what does that mean?
He's a goat.
He's a what?
Goat.
Goat. What did you say? He's a real man. That means like he's a real person. Like say, he's a mensch. How do we have others? What else do we say? Hey, he's really reliable. He's, you can really count on him or her. A mensch. So to think that we could become someone that others drew inspiration from, someone who's like in the fire in the theater would work for others, that whose goal is not just for their own happiness or their own nirvana, but working for the welfare of others, to dedicate your merits that way. So puja, when we say the 7-limb puja, means the 7 ways that the Buddha said, essential ways to please the minds of the Buddhas. It's not as though when you make offerings of water and flowers and incense that the Buddhas are up there, oh, nice, but they could have got better perfume, It's not like there's anything the Buddha doesn't perceive, and he perceives everything, he and she, they perceive all phenomena with the same taste of bliss and emptiness. So it's not as though there's something that they're missing, but they are pleased when you offer, because in offering, sacrificing, giving, you create virtuous karma. And that pleases the Buddhas, because their intent from the very beginning was out of compassion to lead all sentient beings into enlightenment, into realizations. So when you're like a good child, just like when the good child does something, the parents are pleased. The child is usually naughty. When you perform puja, try to please the Buddhas, not just offering. So what are the 7 limbs? Do you know, anyone know? Felicity knows, but hold on now. Venerable knows, so hold on. Who thinks they might know, and we'll give it a little better. Okay, so leave an imprint in your mind if you don't. Do you know the 7 limbs?
I might know some of them.
Okay, give it a try.
Going for refuge?
It's not one of the 7 limbs.
Next.
Next.
I'm out.
Okay, you're out. Okay. Rajiv?
Prostration would be the first one.
It can be in that order. Not always in that order, but often prostration comes first, like we did at the beginning. This is called prostration or bowing. paying respect, sometimes by the body, that's what's called prostration, but even verbally praising, it's called veneration or
Right.
prostration of speech, and by the mind, thinking of the great qualities of the teachers and so on. So that's prostration.
Offering.
Making offerings of various kinds. So again, it's not like the Buddha is going to be really thrilled that you put a Mars bar in the offering bowl or something like that. But in so doing, you create virtuous karma, which pleases the Buddha. And then
Third one.
stymied already.
Confession.
Confession, good. So confession is like what we were talking about before, applying the four opponent forces, feeling regret of the negative actions we've created and so forth. Next limb, next 7 limbs. Help them out.
Rejoicing.
Rejoicing.
Yeah.
So confession has to do with negative karma. Rejoicing, you rejoice in the virtuous actions of yourself and others. This is one of the easiest way to create virtuous karma, and therefore easiest way to please the Buddhas, easiest puja, rather than so much effort accumulating money to buy offerings, building temples, printing books. You just think of the actions of others, virtuous actions, and think, wow, how fantastic, how wonderful. May I be able to do that in the future. Generally speaking, if they are kind of someone of your own spiritual level, we're all kind of the same spiritual level, in rejoicing, if you see or hear of someone doing 100,000 prostrations, so one kind of general practice, they went to Bodh Gaya or in their home over many months, they bowed to the Buddha 100,000 times, you think, wow, so fantastic. Really sincerely, not just, so that other people hear you rejoicing or something. You create as much merit in rejoicing as they did in actually doing that action. Mahamudra Rinpoche used to say, it's the lazy man's way of creating virtuous karma. He would say, I'm just sitting on my bed. You know how Rinpoche at that time, it was like he never slept. He would, maybe at night he'd fall over for 10 minutes and then get up. But he said the boys would come into his room, the monks, young monks at the monastery, and put the water bowls up, and Rinpoche would rejoice in their creating virtuous karma, and he would create more virtue than they, because maybe he was a higher spiritual level than they, in rejoicing. The talk on Wednesday was on the Jataka tales, the previous lives of the Buddha when he was on the Bodhisattva path. When I did my little retreat, I did a little longer than 3-year retreat in my cabin in North Carolina a couple of years ago. And every day I would do the Guru Puja, a very extensive 7 limbs. Okay? And one of the limbs is just one verse, and it is rejoicing. But before I read that verse and thought about rejoicing, I would read one of the stories from the Jataka tales, and I had 2 other books. I think in the course of many months, I'd read every story, maybe started to go around again. And just rejoicing, when the Buddha gave his own body for the sake of others. Once when he was a little boy, son of some Brahmin parents who were very poor, he went out, they were very poor, they didn't have enough money for food, so he went out and as a child he would beg and work to get money to get food for his parents. Then it became famine in that area. He wasn't able to get money or even buy food, so he began to cut the flesh from his own body that he would feed to his parents. There's just some of the, we might think this just like Aesop's fables or just, what's the word? Exaggerated spiritual stories, but from those who have faith in the Bodhisattva's practices, these indeed are the practices that Bodhisattvas have undergone over many lifetimes to create merit, to realize the state of enlightenment for the sake of others. So rejoice about that. It's such a powerful feeling that I could give my liver to someone else, you know. I could give node of my liver, I could give one kidney. When you think of the Buddhas in the past. So that very, very powerful. I recommend very highly if you want to do retreat sometime to get the, you know, some volume of the Jataka tales and read them, especially when you're doing the limb of rejoicing. It pleases the Buddhas because you create merit so easily, so much merit. Sometimes when Lama Zopa Rinpoche does puja, even though there's one verse, rejoicing, we stop there and meditate. How long? Have you been with Rinpoche?
I know.
Oh, you had to get a, what would you do sometime? 20 minutes, half an hour, just meditating on that one, just rejoicing, creating more and more. So prostration, offering, confession, rejoicing, then requesting the Buddha
Requesting the Buddha
to remain. You know, the Buddhas only remain in a way that we can recognize out of our karma. You know, if it's beneficial for us. If it's not beneficial for us, the Buddhas disappear, take the aspect of dying or just vanish. So requesting the Buddhas to remain in a form that we can recognize to lead us is called, you know, requesting the Buddhas to remain. It's said that when Buddha Shakyamuni Buddha, just before he died, he actually mentioned to Ananda, his attendant, that, oh, the Buddha can remain, meaning himself, sort of speaking of himself in the third person, the Buddha can remain without limit, you know, if requested. And it's sort of like, Ananda was sort of like Felicity, you know, doing other things and didn't really sink in what it was in a sense giving Ananda the opportunity to request, oh Buddha, please continue to remain. So some weeks after that, when they were traveling, wherever it was, I can't remember, they had food offered by, what was it, a blacksmith, I think. Turned out it was, the word that's used in the sutras is not clear whether it means pork or some kind of mushrooms, might have been poisoned mushrooms. You know, pigs often are associated with mushrooms in that they sniff out truffles and mushrooms and things like that. So actually, anyway, the Buddha got sick from that. It was some poison, either like bad pork or mushrooms, and died within a day, you know, to a couple of days. So this was, later many of the monks criticized Ananda because he had the opportunity to request the Buddha to continue to remain, but he forgot. So why is that particularly useful? Why is that part of the seven-month puja? Requesting the Buddhas to remain? Because we've created negative karma in the past. We've given up our gurus or the teachers, the Buddhas. You're like, okay, enough. I've heard enough, you know, you can go. Maybe even wishing that they disappear, or are self-absconding from their care, you know, kind of abandoning the Buddhas, or even causing them physical harm, even harming them, harming their lives. But this helps to prevent that obscuration from ripening now. It's said to be one of the most powerful ways to extend our own lifespan, by requesting the gurus to remain, have long life, like ever, forever. Prostration, offering, confession, rejoicing, requesting the Buddhas to remain, and then
Dedication.
the sixth one, dedication, seventh.
requesting dharma.
Requesting the Buddha to teach, to turn the wheel of dharma. So even the Buddhas are existing in the world, if they don't teach, we're very, very limited. Like in India sometimes, maybe you would have experience in India, if you go to see some saint, like Ma or some famous saint, they're holding darshan. What does that mean?
Meditation.
No.
To see.
Do you know what that means, darshan? Anyone?
In Sanskrit it means to see.
Yes. Okay, so you can, that's quite different than meditation. So you would just be in the presence of this holy being. They don't say anything, they just say, darshan, maybe you get inspired, you're crying, oh, the great saint. There's some benefit from that, some inspiration, but without leading you, without giving any teachings, how can you attain their state? You need to turn the wheel of Dharma to teach how to achieve these states. So requesting the teachings, and then attending the teachings. Not like some of us, maybe we even requested the teachings and we don't go. So many times in the past, we had the opportunity to hear teachings, but something else was a little more attractive. We went off and did that. So requesting the Buddha to turn the wheel of Dharma, that helps to eliminate obstacles this lifetime. Many times you want to attend the teachings, and some obstacle comes up, you can't go. Has that ever happened to any of you? You don't have the money, or the ticket was canceled, or the teacher can't come. All of these obstacles are a result of our past negative karma of avoiding the teachings, preventing the teachings, not attending the teachings. So to request the Buddha to teach. And then finally, we create much merit, virtuous karma in those 6 links. The 7th link that pleases the Buddha is to dedicate those merits, like we did at the end of the session. Dedication is a mental activity. It's one that tries to link up the virtuous karma that you've created to a result that is hoped for, that you're dedicating to. Like if you've saved some money, you might put it in the cookie jar or under the floorboard and you say, I'm dedicating that to my kids' college education or my, our vacation home or, so you're setting it aside, you're not going to let it dissipate on something else. You're not going to go to the racetrack with it or anything like that. I had an uncle like that. My father's sister, my aunt, she married Hacky. I don't know what Hacky is a nickname for, Harold maybe. So he was a fireman on the train. In the old days when there was, the locomotive had coal that was put in, the fireman was there. He's not the one who put the coal in the engine, but he had to be there in case there was a fire because of that. So it was an old sinecure job, something didn't need to be there, but the unions still had that so they could give to their older members. Do you know what I'm talking about? That kind of job. So he was a fireman on the train, and at the end of the week when he got his paycheck, almost every week he went to the racetrack. Many times he came the next day or two, he'd come back with his tail between his legs, having lost money. Once in a long time he'd win the trifecta or something, some big race. And they'd have lots of food and stuff for a couple of days, a couple of weeks. So dedication means to try to mentally aspire, wish that these merits ripen in a particular way. Like we said, due to these merits, may I quickly attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, as a typical kind of dedication. How is that different, or is that different than prayer? Is that prayer? Praying that these ripen in that way? What do you think, Venerable? Is dedication? You've heard of dedication,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you've heard of prayer.
Yeah, I guess it depends. Well, is prayer like a virtuous wishes? I mean,
Yeah,
so that to me they would be similar.
it depends on what kind of prayer are you doing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just
Well,
I can't remember the Sanskrit, but maybe it's pradidana or something like that. Anyway, in Tibetan, mun lam, mun means mun means aspiration, lam means path. So what we call prayer or promise or vow, like the prayer of Samantabhadra, some people call it the vow of Samantabhadra. May in my future lives I be able to give my body for others. like Shantideva's written in the Bodhisattvacharya. Everything about me, may I become the food that people need, the boat to take them across the sea. May I become pajamas for those that need pajamas. May I become friend for those who need friend, you know. Just, if you read the dedication section of the Bodhisattvacharya Vatara, incredibly beautiful, the dedication. So that's called dedication prayers. Prayer is a little bit different than dedication. Dedication is kind of prayer, but it's something substantial. May these merits ripen in that way. Prayer might be kind of like, may that come about, without having created some particular
Cause
merits that you're dedicating to that. So the reason for making dedication is to preserve the virtuous karma that we've created. If you don't dedicate, another way, a dedication is a little bit like if you're riding a wild horse. You've got some bridle on it somehow. If you don't control the horse is going to go where it wants to go. He'll go down to the clover field down here, or to his girlfriend's house or boyfriend's barn or something like that, right? But if you wanted to go to a particular destination, you pull on the reins and you direct it in a direction. That's kind of the meaning of dedication. You're left, without dedicating, merits can ripen in their own way. They'll ripen in some, if they're merits, virtue, they will ripen as something pleasurable within cyclic existence. But it might ripen into you being incredibly handsome or beautiful in the future. Without having linked that to virtue, it might become the cause of arrogance, or would beautiful people sometimes become immoral because they're very proud. Other people become devious, like the movie stars and so forth. Or you might become, because of generosity that you didn't dedicate the merits from, you might become very wealthy. But then, as a result of that, if it hadn't been linked with virtue, dedicated to a particular goal, you might become very miserly, avaricious, protecting your wealth and always worried that other people are trying to get your wealth and so forth. So without dedicating the merit, it can actually bring about, even though it will ripen in something pleasurable, wealth, beauty, or something in the future, or because of humility, creating virtue that way one lifetime, in the future you're born in very high status, even physically tall and inspiring, or in high, royal family or high status, but that, having not connected that with virtue, it might become a cause, again, of arrogance, other negative minds. So when we dedicate our merits, we dedicate them to spiritual goals, lofty spiritual goals, so that there's a tendency of whatever way that ripens, it will lead us to a spiritual goal, not just be dissipated in some superficial samsaric happiness. Okay, so basic reason I'm mentioning this. One side, eliminating negative karma, applying the four opponent forces, maybe reciting the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva. On the other side, accumulating virtuous karma, like doing the 7 limb puja. Offerings, rejoicing, even just rejoicing alone. And of the various ways to accumulate merit, one of the positive ways is to recite the names of the Buddhas, like I was talking about this morning, the Sutra of the Three Heaps. Do you remember that? You weren't here, Reggie. The Sutra of the Three Heaps. Did I say that this morning? You remember? Okay. I thought maybe you were thinking, what is he talking? So in that, the Buddha, after reciting the names of these 35 Buddhas of the past, who made special promises to help sentient beings purify negative karma, one actually does the 7 limb puja in the liturgy afterwards, although it's a little bit hidden. But there are 3 main things in that. There's a heap of methods of confessing all the negative actions I did here, this way, this way. All the ways of rejoicing, every virtuous action I gave, I created, even from giving 1 grain of rice to a being in the animal realm. You know, you might think great benefactors, just benefact to the New York University with millions of dollars, or people who give food to the poor, and so big things. Who knows how much merit they create, because the merit they create depends on their motivation, their mind. If they do this to be renowned by others, it doesn't create so much merit. But a bodhisattva, seeing insects without food, giving 1 grain of rice to an ant being in the animal realm, you might say they're insects, but from Buddhist perspective, they're an animal realm, right? Giving 1 grain of rice with a bodhicitta motivation creates more merit than probably all of Washington, D.C. people create in their entire life together. Certainly more than an arhat. That one act of virtue with bodhicitta motivation, 1 grain of rice giving, creates more merit than an arhat creates in their entire career. Arhat, someone who's reached nirvana. You might say, well, they had to have a lot of merit to do that. Indeed. The bodhicitta, so the 3-heap sutra, many ways of confessing, many ways of rejoicing in the virtuous actions I have done and others have done, and many ways of dedicating. I dedicate this to my achievement of the Nirmanakaya, the Sambhogakaya, the Buddhahood, many kinds of dedications. That's why it's called the 3-heap sutra. So those accumulate virtuous karma. Yes, sir.
Venerable, why is it called 7 limbs? Like, what are these limbs?
7 branches, 7 divisions. Like.
Is it our body limbs?
No. You can think of it as the 7 ways that we can please the Buddha. It's not the only ways, but when the Buddha said, these are if you wanted to say how to please the Buddhas, how to perform puja, usually we think puja means making offering, making someone happy. What pleases the Buddha is not them getting some hefty gift, what's the word when you go to a party and you get a lot of stuff? Swag?
A goodie bag. Oh yeah, swag bag.
Swag. Not getting your free iPod or something like that. Oh, what's it? The Oprah's thing. We got a car, we got an iPhone or something. Not like that. That's not going to please the Buddhas. They have everything. Their mind is completely blissful. But what pleases them is when we, like naughty children, when we start to act good. We do these things that create so much virtue or purify our negative karma. So the 7 main ways the Buddha pointed out, it's said that the future Buddha, Maitreya, who's his picture here, he will come when? Before Trump is impeached? Coming soon?
I think another 500 years.
No way. The lifespan of humans will have to diminish to 10. The lifespan of humans will be 10. Every year, the average lifespan, every 100 years, the average lifespan of humans decreases by 1. So when the human lifespan gets down to 10, Maitreya will first come, because the humans at that time will be about the size of your hand. And everything becomes a weapon. Almost sounds like now, verbal abuse. No one will create virtue. And Maitreya will appear as someone the size of a cubit, much taller than they. So they're like this, he's like this, right? And they'll say, "Whoa, what did you do? How did you get like this?" And he said, "I abstained from the 10 non-virtuous actions." It was kind of the teaching that he'll give. He's not as a universal teacher, but that's when Maitreya will appear. Again, the lifespan increases up until 20,000 years. You can't believe that humans can live that. It's a different kind of bodies, more ethereal. Maitreya will come as a universal teacher, like Shakyamuni, turn the wheel of Dharma. So Maitreya, already enlightened, but sort of waiting to the right time to come, it said how he achieved enlightenment quickly is every day he practiced the 7-limb puja, these 7 methods, 7 categories of accumulating merit and purifying negative karma. So if it was good enough for Maitreya, it's good enough for you. I should say that, I don't know, you maybe. It's good enough for me, sir. Just teasing, okay. Anna, you don't like my jokes? You're just more stoic. Yeah, you're just more stoic, you're thinking of this. So before you begin the comprehensive study and practice of Mahamudra, you try to purify negative karma intensively for some period of time, maybe 100,000 recitations of the Vajrasattva mantra, imagining nectar coming, purifying you. Many, many hundreds, thousands of prostrations. One of the, and although it's not mentioned here, one of the most powerful ways to accumulate virtuous karma is offering the mandala. Have you heard of that? Maybe many of you have heard the word mandala. Have you heard of mandala? I forgot your name. What's your name? Rebecca. What is in the context of the expression offering a mandala, what does mandala mean?
The ritual.
Offering of the mandala is a ritual, yeah. But what does in that so-called ritual, which almost sounds like something you do mindlessly, but it has to be done. The real offering of mandala is something you do real authentically. What does mandala represent in that you're offering? What are you offering?
Well, it was precious stones, precious.
Yeah, this is kind of on a very vague way. You might think it's offering this to the Buddha, but what you're offering, you don't have to do anything like that. You can just imagine a whole universe offering to the Buddha, the mandala. So all the things you're attached to, all the things you feel resentment for, people, things, transformed into a pure land, offering to the Buddha. You might say, oh, listen, George, I can offer my possessions, but how can I offer, the whole world? Other people own those things. We all have some collective karma, so sort of ownership of the whole universe. So to offer the whole universe is offering the mandala. The mandala has a sense of that which is the essence. So the whole, the things, all of the samsara that we're attached to, offering to the Buddha, and it's transformed into a pure land. I remember seeing Lama Yeshe when I was at Kopan, 1976 or something. I was upset, I was unhappy. I told him, I can't control my mind, I get upset. What can I do? Are you listening? Lama said, best way, offer mandala. Not just once, again and again. Imagine there's a hand gesture we call mudra, where you can imagine like the Mount Meru in the center and the 4 continents. You don't even have to think of that. You can just think sort of modern scientific presentation of the universe. Our solar system, Earth, circling the sun, all the other planets, other solar systems within our galaxy, first 1,000 that are closest. Maybe some of them have some form of human life, where the Buddhist teachings are there. Then a group of 1,000 of those, so 1,000,000 solar systems. How many solar systems, how many stars are there in our galaxy, do you know?
About 3,000.
more than 1 billion, something like 2, 3 billion that we know of. You know, maybe some obscured by black matter. So 173. So of those stars, many of them have some planets around them. Maybe there's some what we call world systems. So you imagine not only offering this world system with all of the finest things that have ever existed in this world system, like at the time of the universal kings, the Chakravartin kings. What were the possessions, the special possessions of the universal king?
Was it like a wheel?
There's a Dharma wheel that because of their karma, they've created karma, it actually comes through the sky and it acts as a vehicle for them to travel around the continents. What else?
Precious Queen or Minister?
Precious Queen. What else?
Minister.
Minister.
The horse.
Precious Jewel. Korlo Rinpoche,
Okay.
Normal Rinpoche, like when we make the mandala offering. Korlo Rinpoche, the precious wheel. Normal Rinpoche, precious jewel. Wish-granting jewel. Whatever, you would clean it in a certain way, put it on the top of a large pole, make prayers and aspirations. Whatever you prayed for, in the worldly sense, your wishes would be fulfilled. I need, money. Money would come, and so forth. Wish-fulfilling jewel, Koro Rinpoche, Noble Rinpoche, Sumo Rinpoche, precious queen, precious minister, precious elephant, precious horse, precious minister. Or did I say that already? Precious.
Wish-fulfilling tree, did you say that? Is that one?
That's not one of the, when you say that the seven precious things of the Chakravartin Emperor is not there, within the 4 continents, there's a precious tree. Anyway, you offer all of the things that could be, that we might have some karma to obtain. Do we have the karma to be a universal monarch?
I don't know.
Not now.
You don't know?
No.
No, you do. Have you ever made a prostration? Bow to the Buddha? Every time you bow to the Buddha with understanding the Buddha, omniscient mind, you create the karma to be a universal monarch as many times as there are atoms underneath your body. That's why people sometimes make long prostrations. You create more karma. So all of us probably here have made some prostration. Even if you just put your hands at your heart, there's a couple of atoms below. You've created the karma to become a universal king. So offer all of this to the Buddha. Incredible collection of merit. Lama Yeshe said, that's the way to control the mind, right? If you can't control the mind, if you get angry and cause problem for others, or you're upset, you're lustful, you have strong desires, you can't control the mind. Okay, so we're still talking about the preliminaries. So at that point, let's take a 15, 20-minute break. So I'm spending a lot of time on the preliminaries. You might think, I heard that stuff before, but these are things that we need to hear again and again and to put into practice. Don't just keep on the shelf, Someone says, what are the 7 limbs? You can recite them. You need to put them into practice. There's a verse that is recited in taking, very brief taking of Bodhisattva vows that we do every day. If you've taken the Bodhisattva vows, and there's a verse to revive them. It's very, very short. In Tibetan, it's Kontruk Sumla Dakyapchi Tikpat Tamchi Suso Shak. This? Chua Gela Chi Rang Sangi Jangshub Yiki Zung. Literally means, I go for refuge to the 3 jewels. First line, Kontruk Sumla Dakyapchi. Literally, the Tibetans take 3 jewels, the Triratna, as the 3 rare supreme ones, the 3 rare supremacies. That's not the same as, Diana Ross and the Supremes. We're talking about Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, right? Dikpatamshi Susashak. I confess all negativities individually, which means, like when we were talking about confession, purification, applying the 4 opponent forces. Individually, what does that mean individually? You know, confess them individually. So shock. Do you know?
Each
Why?
and every one?
Body, speech,
You
and mind.
you could interpret it that way, but actually what it's supposed to mean is that according to the ritual, say for instance, negativities that you've created with respect to having broken pratimoksha vows have to be purified through ritual with the Sangha, like the bi-monthly confession. You can purify them other ways, but you have to confess means also to revive them here. Bodhisattva vows have to be purified by visualizing the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas before you, and again, taking before them, making the aspiration to achieve enlightenment in their process to revive the Bodhisattva vows and to confess the Bodhisattva downfalls, like the 3-heap sutra. And the tantric vows have to be purified within certain methods of the tantra. So this individually can mean that way, or each individual thing. Geshe Darga used to say in India, he said, you should just count on your rosary all the negative actions that you created today. He said there may not be enough beads. So I go for refuge to the 3 rare supremacies. I confess all negativities individually. I rejoice in the virtues of all migrators. So main 2 limbs here are confession and rejoicing. I hold Sangye Jangjob Yikisum, hold Buddha Bodhi. I hold Buddha Bodhi in mind. And Buddha Bodhi means not the enlightenment, not the Bodhi of the, because sometimes the hearer's nirvana is called the hearer's enlightenment. The Pratika Buddhas, solitary realizers, nirvana is called, the enlightenment of the solitary realizer. But we're talking about the enlightenment of the Buddha, Samyak Sambuddha, fully enlightened Buddha. To hold that in mind means like to have that mind of bodhicitta. So it's refuge, bodhicitta, confession, and rejoicing. So just when I did in retreat, that verse, saying very slowly, thinking of each verse, the meaning, try to bring to mind those factors that make that true. Later, when you recite those verses quickly, let's say when a puja is going on and there's this verse, you can actually, just saying those words, bring back the remembering consciousness of those states. So in terms of Buddhism, we call a remembering consciousness, can you imagine what a remembering consciousness means here? It means a state of mind of something which happened or you generated in the past, like say a virtuous state. By saying these words, it can bring back the experience of that. Otherwise, they're just mere words. I go for refuges, rituals. I confess all negativities individually. You're just, you're mindlessly doing other things. You're looking around and saying the words. Maybe you know the words by memory, but you don't know the meaning. Spending time on each of those lines and meanings, having some taste of that, some experience of that. Then when you recite the words later, in a short time you create so much virtue. That verse is said to be, you should recite 3 times to renew your bodhisattva vows. Okay? If you look in the Tibetan, you'll see that in the prayers that you do. So, very important. So we're in the section of the preparations. And then at the end it says, in addition, make repeated heartfelt requests to your root guru, inseparable from the Buddhas of the 3 times. Or here, from your heart make repeated requests to your root guru, who is indivisible from all the Buddhas of the 3 times. What are the 3 times?
Past, present, and future.
Right. Not Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Buddhas that existed in the past, Buddhas that are existing now. How is the correct way to say it grammatically? The Buddhas who exist in the future or who will exist in the future?
The form
Who will exist or who exists
will exist.
in the future? Well, she disagrees.
Depends on your concept of time.
Huh?
I think it depends on your concept of time, right?
Yeah, it depends on your concept of time, depends on the understanding of emptiness. They have not yet achieved enlightenment. Anyway, the Buddhas, omniscient ones who already are omniscient, they know who will become enlightened, at what time. Everyone will become enlightened, so in a certain sense, they know that now. So of the preparations, we talked about purifying negative karma, mainly through confession, applying the four-pointed forces, maybe certain methods like Vajrasattva, reciting the Sutra of Downfalls, reciting the names of the Buddhas, 35 Buddhas. And then we talked about accumulating merit. Here it mainly said, what did it say about that? Because seeing the reality of mind depends on amassing the collections and purifying negativity. First recite the 100-syllable mantra at least 100,000 times and do as many hundreds of prostrations as you can while reciting the confession of downfalls. So mainly here is talking about creating virtuous karma through prostrating. Remember I said making one prostration to the Buddhas, you create the merit to be a universal monarch as many times as there are atoms under your body. Remember I said that? So this is the main way. Also, indirectly, it's you offering the mandala and other ways of accumulating virtue. So those are two things. Purifying negativities, accumulating merit. So the third preparation here is guru devotion. So it says, from your heart, sincerely, make repeated requests to your root guru, who is indivisible from all the Buddhas of the three times. So who is your root guru? Brian, do you know what that means in Buddhism? Root guru?
Not confidently enough to answer.
Not what?
Not confidently enough to answer.
Okay. You've heard something about it, but not quite sure.
Who you took refuge from?
Someone told you that's your root guru?
Who you've taken vows from? Or your...
Okay. Someone said that who you took refuge from. I think when Ole Nydal, was he Norwegian or what is he? Ole Nydal, when he gives teachings in Russia and other countries, he's a Westerner. He had studied with the Karmapa and kind of felt like he was empowered by the Karmapa to give teachings. You've heard of Ole? No, okay. When he gives teachings, and he gives refuge, he says, now you're my disciple. Almost like what you were thinking. Generally, that's not... How does one... some of the teachers that are out there, how would you say that someone becomes your guru? It's said that when someone teaches you even one verse of the Dharma, the Holy Dharma, qualified teacher, and you develop some feeling in your mind that this is your teacher, that this is true, something that moves your mind, they become your guru, your teacher. You have a karmic connection with them that's very special. By thinking of them, helping them, even bringing them a flower or a cup of water, something you create more virtue than you do just offering to ordinary people because they're your guru, someone you have respect for. Your root guru is someone that you could say the root of your whole practice flows from. So if you've never taken tantric vows or bodhisattva vows, it might be the person who gave you refuge, or it might be someone completely different to whom maybe you never received teachings but has inspired you. Or maybe like the Dalai Lama. Maybe say, I'd like to hear the Dalai Lama. I've read his books. There was, one Catholic priest in India some years ago. Maybe you know Bede Griffiths. Who knows Bede Griffiths? None of you know. So he was, maybe this was 30, 40 years ago, he was in India. He was a Catholic of some kind, I can't remember what order, Benedictine or something, and he came to India and he wanted to in order to make Catholicism somehow appealing to people, he took on the aspect of taking up their practices. He meditated, he wore kind of Indian clothes, and he wrote a book. Some of his Western students who came over to study with him while he was in India, he brought up this concept, Indian concept of guru devotion. You know, practicing with respect to the guru, worshipping the guru. So you could say worshipping the guru, you know, devoting oneself to the guru. And these students wrote a book called Jesus is My Guru. It was very clever. I read it when I was in India. It's just short little book, sort of like taking, what Christ said, you know, thinking of Christ as your guru, then whatever he said to think, this will really benefit me. This is something flavorful there. But anyway, your root guru is the person to whom sort of like all of your practice kind of comes out of. Could be, in this case, like you had said, Nicole? Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. So it could be the person you took refuge from if you have no other further things. Or it could be if you take a tantric initiation from someone, tantric empowerment they call it, that person becomes your guru, whether you like it or not. Not necessarily your root guru. You know, other times, you know, you just go to someone's lecture thinking that it's like you're just going to a lecture. They don't become necessarily your guru, even their famous guru or lama. They become your guru when, from your own side, you've heard from them teachings that have affected you positively, and you think this is the true Dharma that they're teaching. This is a teacher to be respected. So it's some very close connection. But root guru is something, of the various gurus you may have many gurus or you may have few. The root guru is the one, in a sense that you can imagine almost all other gurus are emanations of him or her. That one. Even in Buddhism we even say that, you know, like the Buddha appears in the time of Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakyamuni appeared. Maybe many of his disciples, if not all of them, were emanations of the Buddha. There's a way of thinking like that. Why? Because they said the right thing at the right time for the Buddha to give particular teachings. They acted naughty at the right time for the Buddha to make rules so that later disciples would have these right rules to practice by. So in a sense, also your guru, you know, the teacher who taught you the alphabet from a Buddhist concept or, you know, basic teachings, even they may not be your root guru, you would still see them as your guru, but they may, to your root guru, you might almost imagine they're emanations of that root guru who appeared in various forms that you needed at certain times. So you respect all of the gurus equally, but the root guru is kind of like the root, you know, the source of all of that. So here it says, to make repeated requests to your root guru, who is indivisible from all of the Buddhas of the 3 times. So what does that mean, indivisible? It doesn't mean all the Buddhas are the same. Or how can you say your root guru is indivisible from the Buddhas, or even one Buddha? It kind of means he is or she is a Buddha, right? Has the same nature of the Buddhas. That's the special practice of guru devotion, or reliance on a spiritual friend, on a guru. So what does that mean? How does that come about? How do you think of that? What benefit is that? it's said that if you see the teacher that you're relying on as infallible, let's say as omniscient or whatever you want to say, infallible, godlike, omniscient, that you receive very powerful blessings by following their teachings. Very powerful blessings. What that means is very powerful inspiration to actualize that. This is the real thing. This was said by Jesus, or God said this to Moses, or the Buddha said this, or the Dalai Lama said this. Someone that even you didn't meet them, you receive very powerful blessings to the mind to actualize those teachings. So you can make realizations this lifetime maybe, or in not so distant future. On the other hand, someone who is part of your life now, let's say your individual teacher, even the humble one, looks like many faults, worldly, teaches you, don't pick your nose before eating, or slaps your hand, teaches you, gives you direct, personal instruction. Well, you could say the instruction that you read in the sutras is personal instruction, but in a different level. It wasn't thinking necessarily, it didn't say in the sutra, Mike Young, you should do this and that. You might think that he's saying that to me. That's not what's meant by personal instruction here. When you have a guru who is present in your life and gives individual instruction for you right now, it even sometimes seems like scolding or teasing or beating, or sometimes loving and caring. That brings about very quick, if you follow their teachings, it brings about very rapid realizations. So on one hand, if you see your teacher as perfect, omniscient, infallible, you receive very powerful realizations, blessings to achieve very powerful realizations. If you have a teacher present and you follow their teachings, you can receive very quick blessings. Powerful versus quick. If you see your present teacher as infallible, they become both quick and powerful. My teacher, actually, the omniscient, compassionate Buddha appearing in this, worldly form, maybe scar on the face, or some verbal faults, or gap in his teeth, or, you have to correct his English or something, even with your broken English. You have to correct his English. How kind, appearing in this form, because if the Buddha appeared in a perfect form, we at present don't have the karma to see that. Even Shakyamuni Buddha were to be here. Maybe he's here in this room right now. Certainly, the omniscient mind, Buddha Shakyamuni's mind is here. But even manifesting the Nirmanakaya, we don't have the karma to see that. So the Buddha has to kind of downgrade a little bit in his emanation to appear in a form that seems to have faults that we can relate with. Do you understand? So having that, thinking of that, also the Buddha said, Buddha Vajradhara, the tantric aspect of Buddha, said that in a degenerate age, you should recognize your teacher as me. I will emanate as your teacher. So it's understood that even if the person that you're studying with, especially in Tantra and so forth, may actually be an emanation of the Buddha, but even if they're not an emanation of the Buddha will enter into their body and mind. And by you seeing that person as perfect, as long as they are a legitimate teacher, a qualified teacher, and you take their words to be, couldn't be any higher, couldn't be any more perfect. They are the Buddha, they are teaching me. You take it in that way, you make very rapid and powerful realizations. So this is kind of the rationale behind Guru devotion.
I'm glad you said qualified. I wanted to clarify that all, because there's also a practice of like seeing all sentient beings.
Again,
We can also say that we can imagine all sentient beings, like treating them as bodhisattvas or Buddhas, because we don't know if they're an ordinary being or an enlightened being. But in this particular, what you're particularly talking about right now, putting qualify in front of the teacher is
Right.
the appropriate.
so what it means is like today when you see some of the teachers from the West, I can't say, I don't know their minds. Sometimes one thinks that maybe they got a little bit, like I'm really highly realized, you should see me as a Buddha or something like that. And if you look at their teachings, they don't necessarily accord with the teachings of the Buddha, a little bit. And you look at their behavior and so forth. So in the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, no, it's Sutra Alamkara? Do it again. Mahayana Sutra Alamkara. None of you here have studied that, I think. Maybe you have. But Jeff, I remember, was in India when we studied with Kirti Senchar Brahmaji. He gave us teachings on the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara. There's one verse in that on the Guru. It says, Shenyan Dua Shenyan. It's funny, 'cause I recite every day, when you have to try to, in front of someone else, you have to recite, your mind becomes blank. Usually that's said to be a karmic result of breach of Guru devotion in previous lives. They would purify. And lamas sometimes say that, I can't remember, Then, Shenan Dua Shiwa Neshewa, Yoden Lakpa Sunje Lungichuk, Deni Raptu Tokla, Make Den, Sewe Dagni Kyowa Pangla Den. So what it means is Shenan means virtuous friend. Shenan means friend, but it means, in this context, it means virtuous friend, which is like what we call Geshe. You've heard the title Geshe? Literally that means Gewa Shenan, virtuous friend. Although it's now kind of like a title that's given for, certain degree, but in the case of gurus, that's another way. In the Mahayana Sutras we talk to the guru, we call the guru as the virtuous friend. Your virtuous friend, not just an ordinary friend. Shenyan Duwa Shiwa Neshiva. The qualified guru is one whose mind is pacified, who is Duwa, which is disciplined, peaceful, totally pacified. First of all, three qualities. What that means is someone whose discipline means trained in the Vinaya. So through the practice of observing the vows, restraining from negative actions, is unwild, is not likely to do things, negative actions. The mind is subdued. Shiva means peaceful through the practice of the higher training of concentration. So higher training of morality, higher training of concentration. Completely pacified means through the realization of emptiness, the higher training of wisdom. So not getting blown away when things happen. I remember once at Kopan Monastery, I had bought a statue of Tara, beautiful statue of Tara, and I offered it to Lama Yeshe. And Lama hesitated at first, finally he accepted it. And later there was a lady, American lady, I think, who'd come, and she wanted, Lama had asked her, or Rinpoche had asked her to make the lost wax process, you know what that is, to make statues, 21 statues of Tara. Out of wax, you make a statue, the size that you want. You put that in a certain kind of plaster or something, and then you heat that, There's a little hole at the bottom, the wax melts, and what's left, there's a cavity that's exact shape of the statue. Then you pour in the brass or whatever. It's called the lost wax process. So she had made this beautiful prototype of the Tara from the statue that I'd gotten. She put on the little parts, the flowers, that she had to stick on. It was all beautiful. And she put it in a cardboard box. She was going to put it in the taxi when she was leaving to go off to have it made. A couple days later, when I was walking around the Bodhi tree at Kopan, I think the Bodhi tree is still there, they call it the Bodhi tree. You've been to Kopan? You've been to Kopan? I noticed this box amongst the grass by the Bodhi tree, and I looked that was the Tara statue. When she was packing the taxi, putting her stuff in the taxi, she forgot it. And I noticed that the earrings had fallen off, maybe the arm had fallen off, because they're all just put on by wax. And I brought it up to Rinpoche and Lama up in their rooms. They were out on the veranda, maybe having breakfast or something. And at first, it was kind of like, whoo, Lama Zopa went, oh no! What? Tara, he was very, very excited. And Lama Yeshe said, doesn't matter, Sopa. He referred to Lama Sopa Rinpoche, other people. Before you utter his name, you have to light an incense and bow. Lama Yeshe, who was his guru, doesn't matter, Sopa. Completely like this, the guru is disciplined, calm, totally pacified. Whatever happens, doesn't matter. Realizing, having had some experience in the wisdom of emptiness. Lama Yeshe exemplified that all the time. So the spiritual friend needs those qualifications. Yonin Lakpa Sunje Lunkichuk, who has more qualities than the disciple. Yonin Lakpa Sunje, who is energetic in teaching the disciples, not just someone who's shy, never gives teachings. Lunkichuk, who has a wealth of scriptural teachings, knows the scriptures, what the Buddha taught, Lung scriptures. Deni Raptu Tokla Make Den, Deni Raptu Tokma means deep realization of Deni, which means the ultimate nature of phenomena, another synonym for emptiness. Not just training, like in the first set of three, but actual realization of emptiness. Then skillful in expressing the teachings, and giving teachings, speaking. Sewe Dakni means who has a compassionate nature, who's working not just for his or her own benefit, but for the welfare of others. The reason giving teachings is to benefit others. Kyowa Panglaten. You should rely on that one who has those qualities, plus is Kyowa Pang, who's abandoned, who's given up tiredness, who's energetic, who's given up when you feel sometimes like, I tried so hard, there's nothing else I can do, I'm giving up. What do you call that?
Resignation.
Resignation, maybe, what do you call it? Not desperation. When you feel like discouragement, yeah, there's other words that are similar to discouragement, like discouragement. He's given up discouragement. So, because also we were talking also at lunch, right? When you feel totally discouraged about yourself or even helping others, if you realize emptiness, you realize it's only a matter of, there's nothing in your mind that's incapable. You have the Buddha nature within you. So if you realize that, you can develop the enthusiastic perseverance to overcome discouragement. So that would be called, those are called the 10 qualities of a Mahayana guru. Felicity, you said, what does it mean qualified? So from a Hinayana point of view, there's certain qualities of the spiritual friend, less demanding. If a guru had all 10 of these qualities, they're qualified guru. Even if they have some portion of them in this degenerate age, probably a qualified guru. Even less than that, they said the most important things is that the guru is aim for you and themselves is at least the working for the happiness of future lives, not concerned by just the happiness of this lifetime, how to become rich, how to become, methods to become successful entrepreneur or something like this, and who's motivated out of compassion, has some understanding of emptiness. Just those subtle things. So someone who is qualified and to whom you've heard teachings and you have this heartfelt relationship with it, this is really true, they become your guru. So to make, wherever of your teachers, that teacher that you might feel is your root guru, and you might feel that several of them are your root guru. You don't want to decide. It's kind of like when being courted, or you have several boyfriends, you don't want to say, I really like Rajiv, but Mike is also really nice, and Eric, and I forgot, Ryan, Crash Ryan. You want to accept them all somehow. You can do that, but when you make from your heart, that means sincerely. What did he say here? In addition, you make repeated, heartfelt requests. Sincere requests to your root guru, who is indivisible from all the Buddhas of the three times. What that means is imagining, practice. Imagining on the crown of your head, your guru, without faults, sort of looking, not necessarily like Shakyamuni, but like the perfected form of your guru as they were when they were younger, but before the teeth started to fall out or their, whatever. And at their heart, their name around a disc, let's say, of light at their heart, and as you recite their name mantra, or their name, you imagine, like the Vajrasattva, you imagine inspiration coming to you to make realizations of the Mahamudra, to receive the blessings within your mind, opening your heart. Sometime, one of the teachers who died a few years ago, Gelik Rinpoche, maybe some of you heard of Gelik Rinpoche, very nice Tibetan Lama, had been a monk in his youth. His father had been a great, famous Buddhist guru, and very, many connections. Gelik Rinpoche mentioned in one of the commentaries on Tantra, but I can mention this to you, even though generally Tantra is not something to be taught unless you've received the initiation, but he did mention something about, someone said, but how do you feel the bliss? You're supposed to generate yourself as the deity, and one of the factors of that is you're supposed to have this incredibly blissful mind, not just a sense of emptiness, combination of bliss and emptiness, right? And Rinpoche mentioned just sort of offhandedly, he said, oh, that's supposed to be when the guru enters your heart. Because of your devotion to the guru, you say, it's just like everything's okay. Great bliss. Very interesting kernel. So when we talk about guru devotion, His Holiness praises practitioners of Christianity because through their belief in a creator God, they can develop certain kinds of love for his creatures. If you really loved the God and he said you should treat everyone, or Jesus said you should treat everyone as my creation, I don't know how it's said in the Bible, something like that, right? You should love them because I created them, I love them. If you really are sincere, you can develop a sense of love for sentient beings. So His Holiness said different spiritual traditions, although they're not in accord with Buddhist philosophy, they still have methods to develop high realizations. So here, if you have love for God, if you imagine God entering your heart, or Jesus entering your heart, wow, bliss, release. All worry's gone. Can you imagine what I'm saying? So, from the sense of the guru, when you practice guru devotion, first you're saying his name mantra. Imagine nectar coming, purifying you, bringing you inspiration, and then at the end, the guru comes down, diminishes in size, starts out about the size of your palm, and then diminishes in size to about the size of your thumb, palm, thumb, and then comes down through the opening at the crown, it's called the aperture of Brahma, right at the top of your head, enters there, down your central channel, which is just in front of your spine, through your, what's called the crown chakra, your throat chakra, and alights at your heart chakra, on a seat there, cushion, lotus, sun and moon. And imagine your mind, which is your fundamental, subtlemost mind is located there, becomes unified with the Guru's holy mind. The Guru, who is the essence, who is in nature, the same qualities of all the Buddhas of the past, present, and future. Total sense of, his realizations become your realizations. You understand emptiness, everything becomes blissful. So these are the preliminaries to practicing Mahamudra. Purification, accumulating merit, Guru devotion. So we've covered those. So although we're just at the end, I'm going to just read a couple more lines for auspiciousness for tomorrow. As for the actual basis, this is on page 2, just after the last line of the first paragraph where it says, your root guru, inseparable from all the Buddhas of 3 times. As for the actual basic methods of Mahamudra, there are many ways of asserting Mahamudra. There are 2 when divided according to sutras and tantras. So what we're talking about right now is the Sutra Mahamudra. Tantric Mahamudra is an extension of that. I mentioned yesterday, but not all of you are here. Tantric Mahamudra is once you've realized the clear light nature of the mind, and on the basis of that you've developed concentration, you see that very clearly, you recognize the object of negation of personal selflessness, how the mind grasps through a self of persons that doesn't really exist. Through logic you refute that, you negate that, and you realize emptiness of the person, and then you extend that logic to the mind itself, the conventional mind. It itself is empty of inherent existence. That endpoint, realizing the emptiness of the mind, is said to be, the path of the Sutra Mahamudra. So in Tantra Mahamudra, you go beyond that. You use various methods of Tantra to bring about an awakening, an appearance of the subtlemost mind, which is the one which will continue on to the future. Your mind that thinks of yourself as Rebecca or Anna or, I forgot the sisters' names back there. What are your names? Dan? Was it? Duke and Han. Not that personal mind that's associated with his body. That mind, that gross mind, dissolves at the time of death. When you go to sleep every night, and you still, because you have this body, when you wake up, you have that mind again, that gross mind. But at the time of death, when all of the gross minds absorb, the subtlemost mind manifests. It's the mind that will continue under future lives. It's not one that thinks, I am Eric, I am Ryan, or anything like that. It's just completely like clear light. That subtlemost mind is what is the object of practice of the tantras, especially highest yoga tantra. You try to generate that mind so you can, in meditation, not just at the time of death, you can bring about the appearance of that, and you train for that mind to realize emptiness. It's called the Tantra Mahamudra. So although there are many ways of asserting Mahamudra, there are two when divided according to the sutras and tantras. The latter, Tantric Mahamudra, is a greatly blissful, clear light mind manifested by such skillful methods as penetrating vital points of the subtle Vajra body and so forth. What does that mean? It means if you concentrate on some point in the subtle body, our body now is a gross body. Subtle body, there's certain channels that go through our body now. If you can concentrate on some of those channels, you can bring the energy into those channels and bring about some great realizations. A little bit like this. Actually, this will be the last story because we're just 4:33. We're okay? Anyone has to leave immediately? Just go a couple more. So this may seem like a macabre example to you. A butcher in ancient India. There were different kinds of butchers. The gross butcher, uneducated butcher, you bring the oxen, or maybe if you're Hindu, you don't eat beef, but you bring the goat or something, and the unskillful butcher just takes an axe and whacks away at the head until the animal's dead. Great suffering. Probably the meat doesn't taste as good because all the fear, the hormones are coursing through the body of the thing before they die, right? Skillful, I'm not sure there's an intermediate butcher, I can't remember how he or she does it, but the skillful butcher, like, comes about, it's almost like a magician, comes up and takes a long needle, places it just between the brow of the animal, who's not worried because this person doesn't look aggressive, and just whoosh, penetrating some particular spot, and the animal dies, falls over. So if you're skillful, if you know the vital point to penetrate, same thing in meditation, you can flounder away in meditation for years and years and never make any realization. If you know the essential point, how to meditate, how to generate bodhicitta, for instance, if you know the definition of bodhicitta, how you have to develop it, and you use those vital points, you can develop it quickly. That's one example. But here in the practice of Tantra, when it talks about the subtle body, same like the butcher, knowing the certain point to penetrate, where to meditate, you can bring about a generation of the subtlemost clear light mind, very blissful mind. The Mahamudra of the traditions of Saraha, Nargarjuna, Naropa, and Maitripa, it is the quintessence of the the Mahamudra of the traditions of Saraha, Nargarjuna, Naropa, and Maitripa. It is the quintessence of the Anuttara Yoga class, highest Yogacara class of Tantra, as taught in the 7 texts of the Mahasiddhas, the 3 core volumes. Those are the texts that are attributed to Saraha. So just to finishing right there, just to explain who those are. Saraha was one of the 84 Mahasiddhas we talked about a little bit yesterday. Sara, do you know what Sara means?
It's the name of a desert too. Sahara.
That's Sahara. That's Sara. That's the Indian word. So Sara means arrow. So Saraha is like Fletcher. You know what Fletcher is? Someone who makes arrows and bows, puts the feathers on the. So this was how Saraha made his living. All of the Mahasiddhas, like it doesn't mention here Tilopa, but Tilopa, til means sesame. So he was a sesame grinder to make sesame oil. Looked like they were just like incredibly low, uneducated people, but they were always practicing Tantra. This was their way of just making a living without getting involved in all the intricacies of the world. Nargarjuna, you've heard of, who was prophesied by the Buddha as the one who would reestablish the understanding of emptiness some 400 years after the Buddha passed away. Naropa is the one who studied with the Mahasiddhas, who had been a great scholar at Nalanda University, had a little bit of arrogance, and after giving teachings, one emanation of the Dakinis came and said, "Do you understand what you said? Do you understand the words you said, the meaning? I mean, do you understand the word? How to say? Do you understand the words?" And he said, "Yes, yes." And she laughed and clapped. And then she said, serious again, "Do you understand the meaning of the words?" And he said, "Of course." And she looked, cried, and pulling out her hair, and, acting very fierce, and then sort of disappeared, whether walked away or vanished or whatever. And he thought, whoa, maybe, I know the words, but the real meaning, the real taste, he was like the greatest of the pundits of, one of the greatest of the pundits of Nalanda University and these great Indian universities of the time. So he went on a search to find his real guru, who he came to understand was named Tilopa. Finally he met Tilopa, who passed on this Mahamudra lineage to him. These beings, also Maitripa, I think in the Sakya tradition, they trace their understanding, other lineages of Mahamudra to Maitripa. One of our FPMT centers, like the Guya Samaja Center here, in Portland, Oregon, is called the Maitripa Center, one of the great Mahasiddhas. So I'm going to end there today and leave some for tomorrow. So let's do a short dedication at the end. Relax your body. That itself sometimes takes some effort. Relax your mind. See if you can recall with a remembering consciousness this clear light nature of your mind that's always there. Your body disappears, all the thoughts unattended to, you're turning your mind away from them to the subject mind, just perceiving this vast clear light nature of the mind. And think within that calm state that today, this morning, this afternoon, I've created virtuous karma. I'm going to try to dedicate that now, like taking the reins of a wild horse to lead it not where it wants to go, but where we aspire it to ripen. Dedicate, very strong wish that due to these merits, may their end result bring about my achievement of perfect enlightenment, a state of Buddhahood, from which state I can effortlessly, spontaneously work for the welfare of sentient beings in the most perfect, efficacious manner, leading them from wherever they find themselves now. If it's in the hell realms, leading them to take higher rebirths, to receive teachings, the spirit realms, the animal realms, the humans, maybe understanding that they take many, many, many lifetimes, maybe many eons, but leading them, inspiring them. How wonderful it would be if I could achieve this state, to become a real mensch, a real Arya being, the Buddha, for the welfare of all sentient beings, as a result of these merits today. And then seal that dedication in what's called the emptiness of the three spheres. Even though we're just trying to get a handle on emptiness, think the karmic seeds we've created today, the imprints that have been left in my mind by creating virtue, by listening to the teachings with good motivation and so forth, have created virtuous seeds. They don't exist the way that they appear, in the same way that the self doesn't exist the way that it appears as findable. They're merely labeled onto this appearance. The goals dedicated to our achievement and enlightenment for the welfare of sentient being. Even though we might think the Buddhas, if anything exists, the Buddhas exist. They exist only as names, as imputations, conventionally existent, almost like rainbows. And the dedication, joining these merits to those results that are wished for, the dedication is just a process, a name given to this succession of moments. You can't find what we think of as dedication anywhere among those parts. It's empty of inherent existence. Letting go of those three spheres through understanding their emptiness is called sealing the dedication in the emptiness of the three spheres. And relax again. Thank you very much for your attention, patience, and if you have time tomorrow, we will continue, try to finish up. I think worthwhile. You know, my teacher, my little experience in retreat was that meditations on the Mahamudra and these kind of things, very, 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 very powerful. So if you get a chance to meditate this lifetime on the Mahamudra, if you can get, I think this book is very good. You can get on Kindle, even now, 1 minute now, you can have it on your iPhone or iPad or Kindle. Mahamudra, How to Discover Our True Nature by Lama Thupten Yeshe. So hopefully see you tomorrow. Take care. Go Nationals.